Hello and welcome to Road to Redemption, where we go through our favourite characters in the series and see where they actually go through in their journey. Since Cherry Bomb doesn't have much information on her, sadly, I have stored all of September doing a video to try and find information. When none came up, I went to the second most voted, that being the Radio Demon himself. Though most of this has been covered by Capybara42 on her AO3 account, I suggested to not look at it to avoid plagiarism out of comic decency as a writer. Course of this, I will be going over some information, not only which I have speculated, but also from Blue Raven 666 to cover some form of timeline. It will cover Alice's previous life before he went to hell, his path to becoming an overlord up to the pilot, then moving forward from there. This will contradict some of Angel Dust's story and possibly the comic, as it is a separate continuity more focused on Alastor, especially in the Valentino arc. In this case, it will be the Triple V's arc. The arcs will go thusly, and there will be timestamps in the description down below. Life Before Death, Rise of the Radio Demon, the technological rivalry Alastor vs. Vox, the pilot, the Triple V's vicious attack, Rosie's deception, the Dragons Are Free, Dampening the Theater arc, Pentagram City Festival, Meddling with the Mains, Alastor's Revolt, and Rebelling of the Purge. Some arcs will be shorter than others, but they will pertain to some of the lore that we currently have on him, while filling in some planks to a more cohesive plotline for him to be redeemed. A majority of the cast will play roles in the story, and the characters I have videos on previously on the channel. I do not know how long the storyline will be. I have spent a lot of time and effort writing and editing this. So to all the sinners around the realms of hell, let us begin the road to redemption of Alastor. 1900s. Alastor was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, raised by his mother. He faces discrimination due to his mixed racial heritage, as to many it is considered tainted due to the time period. His nationality caused him to be bullied and ghosted by others, the mental trauma from childhood making him unstable as an adult. Wanting to get back at the people who treated Alastor wrongly, he hosts a radio broadcast by day and kills the people who tormented him by night. This starts the news of his serial killing antics in the newspaper and his broadcasts. 1933. After a long time of killing multiple victims with evil weaponry or Haitian voodoo, Alastor is caught in the act and chased by the police while a hound of dogs hunted him down. Alastor stumbles into a hunted ground to hide from the police, only to be shot by a hunter in the head as he was mistaken for a deer. This results in him becoming a deer demon. His memories are still retained due to his psychopathy. Alastor begins to wreak havoc upon his arrival in hell, as told by Vaggie in the pilot, becoming one of the 12 overlords known as the Radio Demon under the tutelage of Rosie. A couple of decades later, Alastor encounters the newest overlord, Vox. They have a dispute over technology after the serial killer's untimely death, causing a bitter rivalry between the two overlords. Vox grows more in power due to the later technology being superior, along with his allies Valentino and Velvet. Alastor only had an alliance with Rosie. Alastor begins losing power fast due to Vox's shenanigans with the constant evolutions of technology. Upon walking the streets of Pentagram City, the deer witnesses Charlie's interview on an old analog TV at the Radio Shack. This gives him the idea to help Charlie, as was shown in the pilot. Later on, behind the scenes at the hotel, the deer demon can sense a disturbance coming from Angel. He senses a very vibrant hostility from the New Yorker. The Louisiana radio host decides to open a conversation with Angel, though the other assumes he is reconsidering his earlier offer. He is corrected and told that was not the case. Under the guise of husk, Alastor politely asks Angel some questions about his life and his employer Valentino. Angel is nervous at first, hesitant even. Angel's descriptions cause Alastor's ears to twitch as he envisions the abuse that the moth demon brought onto Angel. With mild annoyance, the radio demon demands answers. He leaves the establishment abruptly, heading to Valentino's whereabouts. Alastor uses his magic to open the locked doorways of the ballroom studio. He senses the vulgarity of filth smeared on the premises. Once confronting Valentino, the two overlords slowly face off in slow circles, mostly with the moth demon mocking the deer for his poor hygiene. Velvet and Vox arrive to continue ridiculing Alastor. This triggers Alastor, but he knows he is outmatched by the technological titans. Fuming, Alastor halts his efforts and leaves the building. The event is then blasted online onto television, VoxTube, etc. to further slander Alastor. For once, Alastor was mortified to be in the spotlight. He tries to come up with a plan to take them out one by one. Alastor then thought of the old saying, "Together they conquer, divided they fall." However, the Triple V's are aware of the various threats against them. Thus, their plan that has been elaborated in the Valentino segment of Angel's Road to Redemption occurred. Alastor and Husk enter the studio to try again. Before Alastor can finish off Valentino, the moth pulls out one last trick, turning off the lights in the studio and disappearing from Husk's grasp in a puff of smoke. With an unnerving giggle, he says to Alastor, "How about we play a game for Angel's contract, Radiohead? If you win, I'll give it to you. But if you lose, you'll be having a second bullet in your brain, baby." Alastor and Husk know the best approach is to be silent and avoid detection from the giant moth. It is clear that Val was armed to harm both of them. Husk suggests that Alastor's life was a way to find a generator to bring power to the establishment before they get shot. They wander for hours, coming across Deer and Summer escaping the studios. The girls tell the duo where the generator is in hushed whispers, but also warn them to keep the lights down, especially on Alastor's eyes. Soon enough, Valentino spots Alastor's eyes from across the hallway, suddenly shooting them with a barrage of bullets. Alastor and Husk rush into the room while Deer and Summer make their escape. The former duo are given chase by the large moth in a labyrinth of filth and disdain until they reach the generator. Husk approaches the switch but then is shot to smithereens by Valentino. He then blows out a vast amount of intoxicating red smoke, blurring Husk's senses. This is an advantage for Alastor as he is covered in the same color as the Val smoke. He uses his black tentacles to defend himself against another wave of bullets from the Moth Overlord. Valentino pulls the trigger, sending a spray of ammunition towards the duo. Husk is shot in the right shoulder, shocking the Deer, who was clipped by one on his left cheek. Valentino attempts to fire another round of bullet, but soon runs out. Valentino instead pins Alastor to the generator, messing his face with drool out of sheer pleasure of strangling him. Struggling to breathe, Alastor manages to use a tentacle to tear down a live wire. Husk grabs the wire, giving Valentino a shock. Valentino releases Alastor from his grasp as the radio demon grabs the other end of the wire. They both shock Valentino until the moth falls unconscious. Out of the pimp's coat falls the contract for Angel. Alastor quickly picks it up and tears it to pieces. Before they leave, Alastor traps Valentino in the generator room, using his magic to seal the door, knowing full well he can't come out without force being applied. Time goes by at the hotel. Everything seemed good until television started to flicker every so often. It became more ramped up, spreading the message, "I know what you did." This was a clear sign that Vox knew that Alastor did to Valentino. The Deer Demon knew this was an empty threat regardless of the TV Demon's efforts to grab his attention. Vox and Velvet knew they had to plan something very quickly. Stepping into Alastor's territory would be a risky move as the Princess of Hell is currently residing there. Although, to the Triple V's, she would be a preferred target. Bringing down the princess and more power would be theirs for the taking. Velvet has the idea to spread rumors of false accusations against Charlie and Alastor, calling the hotel program a scam. Vox would boost it on all platforms of media, making plasters everywhere they went. Helsa, Survivor, and Coty Killjoy also pleased to see Charlie being mocked. Alastor could see that Charlie was getting demotivated from this, as so did Vaggie. Both of them tried to cheer her up but failed to do so. She locks herself up in the penthouse, retreating just as often she did from her parents. Alastor knew Vox and Velvet did this to get revenge on him for electrocuting Valentino. He decides to team up with Vaggie, like the old saying goes, an enemy of my enemy is my friend. They head towards the 666 new studios to confront the pair. Also joining them are Husk, Nifty, and Angel. Upon arrival at the studio, they see Katie Killjoy hog-tied, while Tom Trench is tied to a pole, personally being lit on fire by the cannibal chef Jeffrey. Confused by the situation, they see the doll demon cutting up red velvet cake, offering up slices to the 3 guests as a formal greeting. Vaggie suspects that the cakes are likely tampered with, but Husk debunks the claim due to his heightened sense of smell. The burning smell of the bound news reporter clogs his other senses. The 3 sit down by the doll, questioning her rampant attacks against Charlie on social media. Velvet keeps deflecting the answers while wielding a knife in her hands. This gives Vaggie the urge to pull her sharp cutlery out. Alastor shakes his head at his companion, asking what he has to do for Velvet to take down the post. Velvet giggles in a childish manner, requesting to play the knife game. Whoever keeps the most fingers will go to meet Vox. Vox has the ability to delete the posts. Husk declines, as so does Vaggie, for health reasons. Velvet reassures that Jeffrey has a bucket of ice on standby so the fingers can later be retouched. Alastor is the only winning participant in the game that Velvet wanted to play. He steals Vaggie's knife and eggs Velvet on as their match begins. Seconds turns to minutes drastically. The knives increase in pace in between each of their fingers. Time was running out, along with their concentration. As time passes, Velvet loses all of her fingers on her right hand, while Alastor loses 3, but reattaches them with ease due to his magic. The deer looks at Jeffrey, who unties both Tom and Katie from their restraints, then tends to Velvet's wounds. Alastor, Husk, and Vaggie go further into the studio and hear more cries for help. These were definitely new voices they have not heard before. Vaggie recognizes them as Helsa and Survivor von Eldrick. The trio soon reach the room where the rich siblings were hanging upside down over a vat of hydrofluoric acid. Instead of Vox appearing in his normal form, he appears on a massive screen, aka resolution, giving the stereotypical monologue much like Joker gave to Batman. When the trio does not buy into his threats, Vox lashes out in fit of rage, separating himself from the screen. He lets the lads hoist his body and begins to chase them into a maze-like surroundings of the studio. The adrenaline was definitely pumping within the trio, chased by the walking flat-screen TV. Lights flickered constantly and wires sparked as the building was going haywire due to the influx of electricity from the Overlord. If the trio were to split up, Vox would certainly go after his main rival, Alastor. A plan needs to be formed fast between the 3. The deer find himself cornered as the enormous electronic man leans over him, salvating his LED fluids onto the stag before getting hit by a glass bottle by Husk. The annoyed appliance begins chasing the cat, freeing the Overlord while giving Vaggie an idea to best Vox. Alastor summons his tentacles to form a distraction and resistance against the giant walking TV. Vaggie grabs a blunt object, knowing she had one shot to smash his TV screen. She sees both Alastor and Husk playing keep away with the demon. They know the plan without communicating it as the cat and the deer try to force Vox to look at them. This gives Vaggie an advantage as she swings down on a live wire, smashing Vox's screen. Vox screams in agony as screens flickered between himself and static. He falls onto his back, unable to move properly as he was no longer on a mount nor near his body. Vaggie would have loved to finish him then, but Alastor suggested to leave him be. They were done and they knew their place. They order Vox to delete the slander that the Triple V's have wrought onto Charlie. Vox complies, deleting all the posts they could see in real time. He then frees Helson and Sophiathan before leaving the studio. With the Triple V's defeated, everything appeared to be going back to normal. Time was back to a chipper self again. Alastor began exploring more of the city, especially in bars, to get out of his comfort zone. Husk teased him and Angel flirted with him as usual. Alastor meets with his old friend Mimsy, who he had known back in his human life. He extends an invitation for her to visit the Hazbin Hotel to be part of the rehabilitation program. She accepts, provided she gets to be famous in her performances. This occurs in the Henron arc with Angel. Alastor has more talks with Mimsy until encountering his mentor, Rosie, who is Mimsy's employer for her emporium/speakeasy. It was always in Alastor's best interest to play catch-up with his former teacher, though he is now mentoring the Princess of Hell on her rehabilitation program as part of his entertainment. As time goes by, Alastor spends more time with his old mentor than with Charlie, making the princess lose guidance until Charlie confronts him on the issue. Alastor informs her that he is mainly having small talks with the other overlord in hopes she would help spread the word of the hotel for him. Each passing day, each promise being made from Spining Mary Poppins results in no talks of positivity and no new customers. This was starting to disappoint Charlie a bit. She asked the dear demon what was going on. Charlie soon requests to talk with Rosie in person. Alastor acknowledges her request, taking Vaggie and Angel towards the speakeasy to have a chat with Rosie. Upon arrival, Rosie had set up a trap for all of them. She was informed by Lucifer about the project his daughter was doing months in advance. She wanted to sow the seeds of doubt to get Charlie to give up. Angel is able to have some witty comebacks until he is pistol whipped by Mimsy. Her aggressive behavior shocks Alastor as she explains that Alastor abandoned her in his pursuit of his overlord status. She slightly hints on her emotions towards the deer. This only causes the radio demon to laugh at the notion of love being preposterous. It takes the moment for Mimsy to realize that she was being played with. This only makes Mimsy even more angry and wanted to lash out, but Rosie stops her, but not to cause a scene to harm her guests. Rosie explains to the crew that she was informed by Lucifer in person. She had agreed for him that Charlie's idea would not work due to the current climate to decrease the population of Hell and prevent the next purge. This leaves Charlie even more distraught than before upon hearing her father's opinion on a program through a complete stranger. Husk, conveniently seeing a poker table, nudges the deer into the idea of a game with his former master. Rosie sees the two looking at the table and grins, thinking of the same idea and requesting to raise the stakes of their souls, including they have sorted from their dealings. The companions look at each other, concerned about the stakes being raised, but complied. The game begins with Husk as the dealer. For each game they play, more souls are lost. Sadly, Vaggie and Angel lose their souls when playing against Rosie. Only Charlie and Alastor remain against Rosie. Husk was getting traumatized, seeing his friend's souls had been taken away in Hell. He thought it would be completely impossible, but that wasn't the case. The game continues on for hours. Charlie remains unscathed, though Rosie and Alastor are draining fast in their soul power, more the latter than the former. With each soul it drains, it affects the overlords considerably in terms of health and status, etc. If Charlie loses, she loses her soul as she has not made any dealings with other demons or mortals from the surface, unlike her father. Alastor has to take the fall for Charlie. Knowing her considerable luck thus far, she can have more chances of beating Rosie in the card game. Charlie manages to pull through before Alastor gives in, freeing the souls of her friends from the jackpot along with everyone else back to their domains. Alastor and Rosie are restored, Angel and Vaggie are back into their bodies. Alastor suggests to call it a truce with his mentor, to not let her listen to Lucifer's word to give more faith in Charlie's plan. Rosie acknowledges and in return allows Mimsy to go to the Hazbin Hotel program. Mimsy then apologizes to Alastor for her outburst before the game and the risk that Alastor was willing to take to not let Charlie get harmed. Alastor accepts the apology as they leave the speakeasy to the hotel for the time being. While in another room, overhearing the game that was being played, Fitch, Hatchet and Marks begin to set their next move onto the hotel, passing the information onto their mother, Adina, to further her plans for the next purge onto Hell, finding Lucifer's sword, the Morning Star. Adina then gives them the Book of Spells and to entrap the group into a game that will require more skill than in their game of poker. The brothers infiltrate the hotel little by little as Fitch becomes a staff member, impressing Charlie in his interview while raising some concern with Vaggie and Alastor. They've never seen a dragon demon before as they have been long extinct. Before their suspicions are raised, Fitch invites them into a game of demons and dwellings late at night while everyone is asleep. Characters chose the classes: Charlie Paladin, Vaggie Lancer, Alastor Warlock, Angel Bard, Nifty Thief, Husk Fighter. Once their classes were picked and status revealed, Fitch opens up the game and casts a spell on them to put them into a sleep into the world of Fitch's design of the role-playing game. They are all in a tavern. Only Angel doesn't like the design of his bard outfit as it wasn't revealing enough to his companions, causing an argument with Vaggie. Husk notices a bounty on the mythical creature Hydra, to be more exact. It had to be killed without a reward being shown as a price, making Husk confused. After nearly destroying his attire, Angel is ready to face the creature in hopes of finding a way out. Alastor recommends that they go find sources to find the creature's location. Many of the efforts are stalled by disputes of reliable information between Husk, Vaggie, and Angel. There is also obvious a bit of Angel providing his services to complete strangers, not just Husk or Alastor. These mishaps begin to clock from hours to days as they kept going nowhere due to the amounts of stalling. Finally, resourceful information comes to the creature's whereabouts with many side quests to get the location of the creature's lair. The Hatchet disguised himself as a damaged noble, leaving the lair and warning the group of the creatures and its trails. Angel and Husk are about to ignore the stranger, but are rolled out by initiative by Charlie, Vaggie, and Alastor. Listening to more information, Alastor uses his magic to heal the noble from his mortal wounds in exchange for more information. The noble agrees to the exchange, giving them more information as he heads into the darkness. Once he's gone, the noble changes into Hatchet, chuckling lowly before disappearing into smoke. Entering the creature's domain, the light begins to dwindle further inside they go. Both Charlie and Alastor roll for magic to then guide them into the creature's territory. Charlie wins the roll, using her clairvoyance to guide them as they seek out unwanted guests that may lurk in the dark. The group fights a barrage of enemies and solves puzzles bestowed upon them until reaching the end. Husk, Vaggie, Charlie, Angel, Nifty, and Alastor see the noble yet again in the center. Deja vu starts ticking out their spines as he turns into Hatchet, while Marks and Fitch emerge from the shadows, revealing their weapons ready for combat. Angel goes to pull out his weapon to see that it is a bow, but he wasn't used to a more inferior weapon than a machine gun due to his area and begins to complain about it. This causes a distraction and disadvantage for the group as the dragons begin to rip into their health. Charlie has to step in and crowd control the trio to prevent further attacks onto our allies. Alastor and Vaggie try to convince Angel to start fighting the enemy since Charlie was losing health and magic quickly. Alastor suggests Vaggie teach Angel for the time being, while he and Husk back up the princess to fend up the trio along with Nifty. The balance begins to shift as the players begin to push the tide against the brothers. They decide to bend the rules of the game by changing themselves frequently to make their movements more unpredictable. This causes Alastor to start using his magic more seriously, draining his mana of summoning fiends and tentacles to crowd control their opponents into a corner. This works for a time until it gets much worse. The dragons go into the final phase, merging together into the Hydra-like creature depicted on the bounty. The risks are even greater than before, as their powerful spells and attacks were used. Alastor has begun healing Charlie from the damage and cries Vaggie to help with Angel. Otherwise, they will lose the game. Both Vaggie and Angel settle quickly, joining the fray as Angel begins to seem providing a damage buff for the team. Everything was shifting again in their favor. The beast was nearly done. The group needed a good critical attack to finish it off. Alastor complies and summons a giant meteor on the final boss, shredding its health asunder. It falls to the ground defeated as Alastor faints after using his blood to give his attack more power. Everyone rushes to him to see if he's alright. From behind them, one of the heads of the Hydra opens his eyes and it flashes a bright light into their faces as they wake up back at the hotel with dawn rising in hell. Fitch was nowhere to be seen in the establishment. All of his stuff is gone from his room. This only makes Alastor curious, thinking there are more challenges ahead. Any plans to prevent any form of redemption from occurring only excites the deer, providing him with even more entertainment to come. Things begin to quiet down in the hotel, though Vaggie remained very cautious with Charlie's schedule, due to the preemptive attack that was planned. Alastor talks with Vaggie to calm her concerns as he attempts to investigate the events that happened a while ago. He decides to ask Rosie to help obtain information about the Dragon Brothers. Rosie gives him information explaining that they only recently popped up to a speakeasy, also wanting information on her behalf of being of a higher power. Alastor asks for the person's name, but even Rosie doesn't know the dragon's true intentions. Alastor begins to speculate who could be pulling the strings behind the scenes. While Vaggie and Alastor theorize, Charlie suddenly barges in, telling them that they were invited to our grand opening of an amphitheater by one of the other overlords in hell. Charlie's excited to see the theater as she was into musical, mostly due to Lilith being a performer in the arts. She says it would be good for everyone to get some ease away from the hotel for the occasion. They join the meeting with the two-headed overlord bird, who is more respectful towards Charlie, but also sees the other perspective. As the event goes underway, Hatchet is deployed by Fitch to cause havoc from within. Hatchet infiltrates the bird disguised as a staff member he had knocked out. He becomes familiar with the layout and the schedule, retaining the recent memories of the staff member. He waits for the right moment to strike. The Overlord guides the Hazbin staff around the restored building. The building had completed years of effort from its destruction from the purge over a decade ago. They arrive at the table, seeing flickering lights overhead, but are put at ease by the blue deer skull overlord. He explains that electricity has yet to be finished in the establishment. As a two-headed bird sits down, pain strikes in his heart. He collapses onto the table, bleeding out from an angelic wound. Everyone was shocked to see an overlord dead like this, and so sudden. They don't know who to point towards. The Skull Overlord informs them that there is a storm outside, hence why the electricity went weary earlier. Alastor takes reins as a detective, though Vaggie argues that she should try to solve it. Alastor retorts that the killer is still in the building and reminds her of his past as a serial killer. Vaggie soon complies. Alastor then begins to inspect the body, pulling out the part that killed the Overlord for further examination. Upon inspection, it appears to be a shard of a holy spear made from an angel. Charlie verifies this, but also is confused as to why an angelic weapon would be there unless someone in the room was a double agent working for the angels. Charlie then decides she must find out the reason behind it. Alice begins questioning everyone to clear them off the hook, until Nifty, on her usual duty of cleaning, sees a broken plate with a tiny hole. The plate reveals a silencer working on a timed for a trigger to be pulled. Alastor questions the staff, knowing his friends wouldn't have an agenda. It soon dawned on him that he was also an overlord, that he could take more territory and power. Revealing he was a serial killer in the previous life, could paint a target on his back. Hatchet, in his disguise, gaslights and the theatre staff to go after Alastor and school overlord for the murder. The staff takes the roles of judge, jury, and executioner, chasing the Hazbin crew in the theatre until they all split up in groups of two. Alastor runs with Husk and Nifty, while the Skull Overlord goes with Charlie, Vaggy, and Angel. The chase and trial go on. The Overlords would have to have their names cleared, or they could be guilty by treason by Lucifer. However, it would change if the dispute became known to the public. With the two groups in separate areas of the establishment, they find clues to help solve the mystery, while also hiding from the bloodthirsty staff demanding justice. Husk finds a diary of schedules about the opening to see the list of staff that were supposed to attend. He sees one that clocked out early, but Nifty remembers seeing them in the hall. On the other side of the building, Charlie finds a book of angelic lore, opening to find a random page out of information of Adina and her sons. Though Vaggy and Charlie's memories were fuzzy, they remember their faces from the dream that they had. The Skull Overlord indulges that the dragons are shapeshifters and do their mother's bidding until their objective is fully complete. Charlie vaguely remembers Adina as she was an ambassador of hell trying to stop the purge, but the opposition would not allow any demon to be redeemed. The only option was to get the staff confused among themselves as to who the serial could be. Once both groups merged back, they tried to find the aggressive staff of the theatre. Once confronted by the group, they demanded Alastor's head on a mount, while calling all kinds of names and slurs that no longer affected him since his previous life. The deer began to clarify that there was an imposter in the staff, saying that the person couldn't be there as they had left before the event started. Charlie speaks up, saying that the individual is working with the angel Adina, who is trying to sabotage her plans of redemption. The theatre members begin to question themselves until one of them shapeshifts into Hatchet. With a toothy grin, he pulls out two large meat clavers, charging at the princess at a large-ditch effort. Alastor sees it happen very quickly. The Skull Overlord grabs the dragon by the arms the moment he changes again into a fleeing mouse. The husband staff began to chase him outside into the storm. Hatchet changes back into his normal form, turning to the crew. He begins as the flashes of light split him into chunks in front of the princess. This deeply saddens Charlie, seeing that you didn't want to be redeemed. It reminds her of how traumatized she felt when she saw her people get slaughtered by the Exorcist for the first time. Vaggy holds her beloved princess in dearly. Alastor and the other overlord lead everyone back inside for the time until the storm ended. Alastor spots Finch in the distance on the clock tower, seeing the wires he had pulled as he had killed Hatchet to prevent any loose ends. This only causes Alastor to grin even more as his entertaining grand scheme was beginning to unfold. Hours later, the storm subsides and everyone is allowed to leave. The Skull Overlord makes his departure first to go inform Lucifer of the events that had occurred. The place could not be opened again until further notice. The experts came in to take the body of the two-faced Overlord and Hatchet's body parts for incrimination while they questioned the staff, Alastor and the crew. The crew was able to eventually leave, heading back to the hotel to collect their thoughts from the night before. The one that hit them most was Charlie, seeing the person who didn't want to be redeemed die before her eyes so willingly. Both Alastor and Vaggie go to comfort her efforts and perspectives along with the rest of the crew. The Hazbins know they're in this together, as the bigger picture was slowly being revealed. Adeline was saddened to hear that her son Hatchet had died for the sake of the mission. She says Fitch to go back down to hunt down Marks for his mission, while she tends to Malcolm, who is oblivious to what was going on out of heaven. It was similar to Charlie being oblivious in the events of hell for hundreds of years, and it begins to somber down in hell with the occasional mishaps between Angel, Mimsy, and Husk. However, the annual Pentagram City Festival was about to get underway, giving Hazbin Hotel a definite boost. It was not for the sole purpose of the program, but it was for demons traveling into the city for the event. Charlie checks to see who are the headliners for the festival. She sees her mother is front-running for the main stage with Missy Zilla and a Red Owl Overlord, while Zestial and Camille are part of the carnival at Lulu World. Charlie was guaranteed that if she talked with her parents, she would more likely get a booth at the festival, and it would have been near the entrance. The event was week long. No matter how many strings Charlie tried to pull, her father flat out said no. Her request was ignored by Lilith as well. Alastor decides to do something about this, getting the booth for the hotel, much to everyone's dismay. It was the furthest point of the venue. Lucifer doesn't think too hard of either Alastor nor the hotel as a whole. Much to everyone's dismay, everyone split to cover more ground to bring attention. Husk and Angel are drinking before the Spider challenges students into a hot dog eating competition after Molly and Nifty are misjudged for their food. I reckon this plays with Moxie in shooting gallery, while Vaggie plays with Millie to test their strength, etc. Charlie mostly hands out with Alastor, knowing he could probably cheer her up with talks and his overall opinion of the festival. He doesn't mind though, he refuses to adapt how far technology has come since his time. The announcer voice says that Lilith will be performing next, and Charlie pulls Alastor to the main stage, Lilith sees her daughter for the first time in a while, and gets them both backstage. Marks, disguised as an engineer for the festival, sees the two. Using his walkie-talkie into a private network, he communicates with Fitch to begin the sabotaging the festival to pit the overlords against each other. Marks moves into position, setting everything up for the festival's demise in the schedule while he was given. Charlie has a heart-to-heart conversation with Lilith over the hotel. Alastor is in agreement with the princess, requesting a talk with Lucifer to give him more in-depth insight about the program and its progress. Charlie doesn't know whether to be excited or frightened by the thought of confronting her father again. Alastor reassures her, and they both leave Lilith to go find the others. Mimsy begins hanging out with Vaggie, hoping she would find more stuff on Alastor. She still has feelings for him. The Moth answers honestly that Alastor is more focused on himself, his work, and having some form of entertainment. It takes Mimsy a while to process the information, but acknowledges it to be the truth. Alastor and Charlie meet up with Vaggie and Mimsy when an explosion occurs nearby. It was caused by a cherry bomb throwing her own weapons into the shooting gallery, blowing up the store. Cherry fights with Arachnus and Moxie. This causes both IMP and the Hazbin crew to stop whatever they're doing to disengage the fight that was brewing. This provides the structure and Vance to slip into the circus part of the festival, disguised as one of Robophiz's assistants to start sabotaging them. Both crews make their truce for the time being and stick together. They go with Stolas and Octavia to the circus event hosted by the overlords Zestial and Camille. Everything seemed at ease. Zestial and Robophiz were to appear before Camille's act. Time went on as the event under the tent went underway. Alastor and Mimsy feel nostalgia, being reminded of when they performed in their human lives. Little by little, incidents start to occur between the overlords, from bad timing of the creatures to damaged equipment being used. Many members were also attacked. Camille and Zestor start to whisper, knowing they shouldn't expect many incidents. Everything was rehearsed dozens of times before the festival even started. Zestor tells the audience to go to the main stage while they investigate matters with the circus. The guests comply, heading to the stage to see Lilith sitting on the stage with the Red Owl Overlord and Missy Zilla. They were getting their equipment ready to perform disguising music from their eras. Charlie was mesmerized with how her mother looks on and off stage, always fascinated with her mother's wardrobe. She moves closer to Vaggie as the stage is set. The Red Owl plays piano, hearing it was out of tune when he had just fine-tuned it minutes before. Mrs. Zilla recommends a keyboard for temporary measure which he agrees. Alastor could see a shadow which was not meant to be in stage as power begins to flicker. The lights behind blink and the mics cut out in audio. Lilith is annoyed by this and orders some demons to help fix the issue as soon as possible. But with every fix, there is another sabotage that follows right after. The radio demon goes in to inspect. He sees Marx tearing the equipment apart, and both of them soon engage into a fight. Marx wields an angelic spear, while Alastor holds his own with his microphone. Charlie is curious to see where Alastor went as Lilith performs. She and Vaggie go off to find him. Once they go backstage, where Alastor and Marx were fighting, Vaggie joins into the fray to help Alastor fight the shapeshifter as he is badly damaged. Charlie experiences sudden flashbacks of her people being killed by the angels. This causes a chain reaction of negative emotion, unleashing Charlie's shadow into a full demon form. She stops the fight, tackling Marx into the ground, punching him in the face. Vaggie and Alastor see Charlie taking her anger out on a dragon with stunned looks, then quickly restrain her. Alastor knows this is the poor choice for Charlie. Vaggie also tries to snap Charlie out of her rage. With more talks to the princess, she slowly calms down. A beaten Marx calls out and leaves Lula world before getting caught by Fitch. Marx begs Fitch to let him live and promises he won't tell anyone about the plan. The cold-hearted Fitch just remains silent and summons a spear. In the ruthless gestures, he kills his own brother again, not wanting any more loose ends. Vaggie, Charlie, and Alastor emerge from the backstage from the bloody battle they have fought with the dragon. Zestor sports the injured pair, calling an ambulance, while Lilith stops performing to be with her daughter. The succubus looks into Charlie's bloodshot eyes. She hugs her daughter in reassurance, knowing that everything is now okay. Zestor takes Alastor and Vaggie to the hospital to get their wounds treated immediately. Lilith could see that Charlie wanted to go with her friends. She complied and informs her that her father would be speaking with her in the coming months. Charlie cries tears of joy before running towards the ambulance with the rest of the crew to go to hospital. Time goes with Alastor and Vaggie now back to full health. Many folks come to and go from the hotel, using it for its initial purpose of it being a place to stay. It was not used for redemption as Charlie had planned. This leaves Charlie in a bit of a predicament, worrying about the status of her hotel, but she is excited to have the ability to talk to her father once again, hoping to change his mind as she was backed up by an overlord. Though she has her doubts, Vaggie and Alastor reassure her that they were able to get through to her father about the hotel and the program. Lilith calls Charlie, telling her the exact day when she can meet her father, as he had been stalled with the Overlord meetings and the debacle that occurred in Lulu World. Charlie smiles, knowing her father was busy but was willing to spend time with her. Razzle and Dazzle drive the trio to the main palace, which is surrounded by guards in every corner of the establishment. This was due to an assassination of one of the overlords. This concerns Alastor and Charlie of how much Lucifer is taking drastic precautions for either himself or something else in mind. The trio enters the establishment with the two little goats, but little did they know, those goats were actually Fitch in disguise as he kidnapped them and stuffed them in the brewing closet of the hotel. The head butler guides them to the Lucifer's main meeting chamber to have a lengthy discussion with her family. Lilith greets her daughter with a hug along with Vaggie in unison. However, Lucifer gives them his usual large grin while giving his daughter the cold shoulder, being busy and not feeling close. He wanted the conversation over and done with. Charlie knows that the only serious persuasion was going to convince her father that the program was still a good idea. Alastor senses the hostility between Lucifer and Charlie. Then he realizes he can use it to his advantage, clarifying to Lucifer the statistics of the hotel patrons. The fallen angel begins to question the idea and his involvement with our project. Alastor vaguely answers while leaving out details of his agenda with his showman smile. Lucifer narrows his eyes in suspicion, passing judgment onto the demon. Charlie feels like she was stuck in the middle. Lucifer cunningly proposes an idea. He decides to make an offer to Alastor in a game of chess. Charlie's program would either get the support it needs or the hotel will be torn down. Alastor agrees to the deal knowing that there was a lot at risk, but Alastor was up for more games, while meanwhile Fitch begins searching the manor to find the Morning Star Blade to pass the information on to Adina. If Adina had the powerful weapon, she could wield it to kill the main family after wiping hell with a clean slate in the next purge. The fallen angel then guides them all outside to the garden towards a massive chess set, with Lucifer on the white side and Alastor on the black side. The game is set between the two as Lucifer makes the first move. Alastor was familiar with chess, but feared this may have a twist to it, as he always believed that the king will always have a trick up his sleeve to surprise his opponents. It takes a while before Alastor makes an opening for Lucifer to take out his pawn. The pawn comes to life, sheathing its sword and slashing the enemy in smithereens before moving on to its place. The crew was shocked to see the place to be smashed like that, as it was a cat toppled a vase on purpose. This only makes the King of Hell grin even wider, narrowing his eyes in delight. Alastor has to think several steps ahead to figure out Lucifer's move and outwit him in his own game in order to gain his support for Charlie in the hotel. The game lasted hours between the pair as they tested each other's intelligence. Both of them are evenly matched in their clash on the board, though Lucifer has the upper hand. Meanwhile, Fitch is sulking in the manor trying to find the location of the Morning Star. He searches the establishment top to bottom to find nothing. This leaves him scratching his head until he looks at the window, observes the chessboard below, and finds that the White King has the weapon that his mother desired. Nifty and Husk patrol the interior of the hotel. Upon hearing a noise from the broom closet, they open to see that the tied up is Razzle and Dazzle. The little cleaner unties the goats, who then warn the others of Fitch trying to get inside the palace to assassinate Lucifer. Both of them are shocked, and Dusk tries to call Vaki, but there are weak signals. The clashes between Alastor and Lucifer are becoming more intense. The king has the upper hand, but the deer has one last trick. He moves his black rook into its final position. The king was trapped and checked. This shocks Lucifer, not seeing Alastor's strategy so soon. The rook begins to close in on his king. Suddenly, a flash of dark green flickers nearby. The king's sword was snatched away when it was struck by the rook. The group slowly turns to see a grinning Fitch wielding the Morning Star in his hands. He points the blade at the fallen angel. Lucifer's eyes turn red as he spreads his black wings as intimidation tactic, but Fitch dashes in, slashing them on in several swipes. The king screams in pain. The group arrives to aid him as Fitch laughs at how Lucifer became soft over a millennia. Alastor is about to step in to face the thief, but Fitch talks with Alastor's shadow. But Alastor is pulled to the ground. Vaggie tries to intervene, but his shadow trips her. Fitch walked up to Alastor and whispered something in his ear. Like a spell, triggered by a past memory, Alastor collapses into slumber. Everyone takes both Alastor and Lucifer to a private ward to get better treatment. Lucifer heals from the damage, but his wings won't be able to regrow as they did when he fell from heaven. His regeneration wasn't as rapid against angelic weapons. Alastor, however, was remained comatose under Finch's spell. Alastor is in a deep dream, back in his past life as if he cheated death and never went to hell. Shocked by his second chance, he looks outside to see New Orleans as if it was back in the 1930s. Alastor doesn't know that his shadow took over his body for the time being while surrounded by his friends. Everyone was asking him questions on his health. His shadow spoke calmly with very few minimal words while still retaining his trademark smile. Alastor was then discharged after getting back to health. However, Lucifer left earlier to be taken care of by Lilith. Meanwhile, the real Alastor in Zone consciousness gets to see his mother again for the first time since her death, before he became an adult. To him, this was a daydream, to be able to be by his mother's side, have a job as a radio host, and the ability to kill again. With each passing day in Alastor's little world, he racked up listeners and victims in tandem, while his shadow in the real world maintained his composure. But he was really negotiating an attack with Fitch, who had given the Morning Star to Adina, as he had planned the next purge earlier than expected. She aims to get rid of the main family and the rebellious ways and make Pentagram City a forgotten wasteland. In the dream world, the time begins to repeat the same day, again and again. Alastor noticed the pattern, feeling that everything was just a memory, a figment of his imagination. He had to find more information on what was going on outside of this illusion. His shadow, on the other hand, was bringing in crates which were filled with explosives disguised as fireworks for the 1-year anniversary of the hotel's opening. Alastor, in every attempt, tries to break the spell that contained him deep within his mind until an illusion of Fitch breaks in. Alastor sees the dragon and begins to make demands as the scenes change to the ruined Pentagram City. The radio demon was split between him and his demon self, surrounded by corpses of his allies. He witnesses a vision of Adina plunging the Morning Star into Charlie. This shocks Alastor to no end, seeing the Princess of Hell fall to the ashen ground next to her parents. Fitch explains how Alastor is currently being used by his own shadow to destroy the hotel in the worst way possible, giving the angels more than enough reason to intervene by bringing the purge due to him and Charlie being the dangerous threat. Alastor was at his weak point and wanted to mutilate the demon with his hatchet, but the weapon disappeared. Alastor was fed up of being perceived weak to Fitch. He summons his demon powers to fight the illusion, knowing Fitch was the key to breaking him out of the trance. He lunges at the creature but keeps vanishing into a speck of dust, then re-emerging whole to strike back. The fight intensifies as the illusions flicker between Alastor's past, present, and future. Alastor's shadow sets the explosive in place, giving the button to Charlie. She is ready for the massive celebration of the hotel, and her parents will be guests there among the overlords they have saved from the calamity. The match between the real Alastor and Fitch continues until both are mostly drained of their energy. Alastor's eyes darken. If he didn't feed soon, he would lose his power. The deer had to time everything right with the dragon, as he was going to be his next meal. He turns into his demon form, readying his defenses as Fitch charges. Alastor teleports quickly, then takes a big chunk of the dragon's neck, restoring his energy. Fitch screams in the pain, causing his concentration on Alastor's shadow to falter. The deer figures out a way quickly and strikes back. The dragon was faster than before. The mutilation of the shapeshifter begins to unfold as him and his plan against the deer was backfiring. A portal out of Alastor's mind was soon opened. Alastor tackles him through the portal, though Fitch disappears partway through, making Alastor tackle Charlie instead. Vaggie gets furious seeing Alastor attacking her girlfriend in such a manner, pulling out her spear to attack him. He retracts his demon form, not knowing what had just happened, but providing an explanation of his premonition that the enemy gave them. Charlie had to sit down, overloaded with the information that she had been given. Vaggie interrogates the deer, wanted to know more in case he was lying. But Alastor promises he was telling the truth. Charlie had to be cautious from now on, not wanting to listen to Alastor's word anymore after attacking her out of the blue. Alice is concerned about Charlie, but Vaggie makes it verbally clear that if he charts Charlie, he will return into a venison and kebab. Alastor respects his own 5-foot rule for this event. This causes a divide between him and Charlie, but respects her wishes as the party goes underway. The Shadow had already placed the fake fireworks outside and the explosive inside the building. Everyone attends the event and are greeted respectfully. Overlords stick into their groups, keeping their distance from others due to the trauma they had to go through fighting Alastor. Lucifer stands close to his wife, drinking some wine and being greeted by Charlie to this celebration. The party was calm at first, though the tension between Alastor and Charlie was incredibly high as the deer attempts to warn her, but Vaggie pushes him away. With every advantage, Alastor attempts to talk to Charlie but is subverted by other distractions and Vaggie keeping a close eye on them. Everyone goes outside, not knowing what heaven was beginning to rise as hell's night began to fall. Fitch watches from a distance with Adina tending to his wounds from afar, waiting for the next part of their plan to fall into place. The clock was definitely ticking for Alastor as he looked at the watchtower to find one day was left remaining for the next purge. Charlie is eager to get the fireworks up and running. Alastor goes into a panic, grabbing Nifty, Husk and Angel to stall the princess any way possible. The plan seems to work at first until Charlie bursts into a demon form, pushing them back while pressing the button. Some fireworks go off for a while, but in a jolting moment, the hotel blows up as if a nuke had been dropped on it suddenly. This breaks Charlie's heart to smithereens as she connects the dots and angrily glared at the radio demon. Charlie had gone super Nephilim, overcome with emotion as she goes into rage, lunging at him with horrendous speed as the rest of the guests and staff began to unravel under the rubble. They witnessed the fight between the princess and the radio demon. Alastor doesn't want to fight her, but a look into her red eyes, she was too far gone in her anger. Fitch grins from afar, building the morning star as the clock ticked ever so closer to midnight. Everyone watches in terror as Alastor was being smashed by Charlie into walls and along the ground. Lilith, Lucifer and Vaggie intervene to stop Charlie's rampage, only to paint a target on their backs as the clock strikes midnight. The bells began to toll, snapping Charlie out of her rage, knowing the purge was coming. All the overlords were out in the open, with nowhere to hide from the exterminators and angels. The beings swarm around them with their weapons, grinning maliciously at the treasure trove or bait waiting for them. Lucifer was prepared to re-engage along with the rest of the overlords as they surround Charlie and Alastor to protect them. Adina prepares before them in her radiance along with Fitch. Lucifer growls in fury to see that his beloved weapon was being defiled by a dragon. They know they have fallen into a trap by those two cunning individuals. Charlie is afraid, thinking she was about to die, while Vaggie, Angel and the rest reassure her that she had brought them all together closer as a family that can fight for their redemption. Charlie looks at Alastor, wondering if he feels the same as the others. The deer readies himself for battle, summoning his microphone with a glare at Fitch. Charlie goes into a demon form and everyone charges at the angel and exterminated. War wages between heaven and hell, not just a purge, but an apocalypse. All the demons go all out with not only magic but weaponry ranging from melee to machine guns. Suddenly they were outmatched until Lilith summons her army of performers. Angel brings in IMP as grounded support. IMP uses the ritual books as diversions to bring angels out of the realm. In one section of the battle, Adina and Fitch are closing in on the mains. Angel just charges at the angel, but Adina tortures him with her ribbons and visions of his worst fears. Molly and Arachnis intervene and cut the ties, while Alastor and Charlie have a standoff with Fitch. Lucifer grows back his black wings again, wanting to face Adina by himself, but was interrupted by Lilith, joining in as a tag team. She clashes with the heavenly creature. Both women are evenly matched. Fitch flickers between the princess and the deer, looking at little moth, piercing her way through the masses of angels to get to Charlie. With an evil grin, Fitch decides to go after Vaggy, but is trapped by a massive amount of tentacles summoned by Alastor to stall his attack. Charlie assists him by tackling the dragon as if she were a goat, causing Fitch to lose his grip on the Morning Star. Alastor sees the advantage point and lets one of his tentacles chuck the weapon to the other side of the field. The mains, Adina, Fitch and Alastor glare at the weapon in the air, knowing it would be a game changer for either side. They began to run towards it while attacking each other. Adina and Lucifer fly into the skies, battling each other with tremendous power, both of their feathery wings becoming battered. Their feathered wings gave the scene a more mystical look of heavenly white and hellish red and black, a smoky haze that appears among the ashes and sprays of blood. Everyone rushes towards the Spone Star. The first one to grab it is Mimsy before she is suddenly mauled by an angel. Mimsy tosses it to Arachnus before Fitch uses his wires to slash off his right hand. The momentum then swings and results in Angel Dust grabbing the weapon as he is surrounded by angels. The Triple V's jump into Intervenor's cover with arsenal of bullets from Valentino, knives from Velvet, and electricity from Vox. Valentino and Angel exchange pleasantries for a short time, though the Moth Pimp is stoic after losing his favorite porn star. Angel attempts to give the weapon to Lucifer, but is stopped by large angels holding copies of the Morning Star that only harm demons during the purge. The angels are suddenly bombarded by bombs and lasers coming from Serpentius and Cherry Bomb, while they're also being attacked by a school of exterminators. Just before Angel can throw the sword, he gets to a scrum of angels before he throws it into the distance. Nifty grabs it and is taken into the air by Husk. Husk warns Nifty that things are about to get dangerous as he was about to get into a dogfight with the Seraphim. Nifty tries to hold onto the sword as much as she can, but the weight was too great. She drops it after losing balance on Husk. Vaggy spots the artifact falling and leaps into grab it as soon as she clashes with Fitch for the first time. Fitch mocks Vaggy, claiming that she has no way to wield the sword, but Vaggy smirks and retorts that she knows enough due to her usage of a polearm. The two began to fight. Fitch summons his wings, which were damaged from his battle with Alastor along with his wires. Charlie and Alastor join in to assist Vaggy. Fitch is outmatched, but he pulls out his scepter and lunges it into Alice's abdomen. The dragon then sidekicks Vaggy, making her drop the relic. Enraged, Charlie dashes forward, picks up her father's sword, and slashes Fitch's face off. This catches Adina's attention. She is stunned that her favorite son had been killed by a Nephilim. She is also stunned that Charlie was able to wield such a powerful weapon. Her shock turns into unbridled fury as she flies towards Charlie. Alastor stands up upon his shaking legs and clashes with Adina as he coughs up blood. Adina uses her ribbons to torture Alastor with pain, fear, visions of attacking dogs flooding his mind. He then screams at Charlie and Vaggy to finish her off. Charlie is shocked, but Peggy reassures her that ending her to save Hell is the right thing to do. Together, they take the Morning Star, plunge it through Alastor and Adina's torso. Everyone freezes as Adina falls with a final gasp, her blood staining the hollow ground. Charlie and Vaggy pull the relic out of Alastor, which causes further damage to him. He collapses in between them as they hold him up. With Adina now dead, there was no one left laid to lead the purge. The angels and the exterminators flee back to their realm. This is a victory that Hell had never seen before since the purge began. Alastor murmurs something inherently, feeling lighter than normal, not just from the loss of blood, but from the black wings that suddenly sprouted out of his back. Ironically, Charlie's program had worked on one person who had least faith in it. Alastor had been redeemed. He soon turned to his human form, in a flash of light. Now Alastor had a choice to go to heaven as a small convoy of angels await him. He listens to everyone's last word and gives Charlie a hug before joining the upper realms, wanting to see his mother again. Upon entering the pearly gates, Alastor reunites with his mother again. They hug for the first time in over a century since our passing. They exchange conversations about what they had been up to in both realms. His mother was interested to hear that her son was an overlord in hell. She is proud of him of bearing the weight and supporting the princess. Alastor smiles, remembering his time in hell with Charlie and the friends he had made. He begins to miss them as months go by. He then decides to negotiate with God himself to send him back to hell. Alastor also finds heaven to be too boring for his liking, although it was nice to see his mother again. Alastor prefers the entertainment and sinfulness of hell. God complies with his request. Alastor gives his mother one last goodbye before he is tossed back down to hell. Things were quiet at the hotel before Charlie hears a familiar shave and a haircut knock at the door. Charlie opens it with a hesitant look on her face. Everyone jumps out of their seats to see the stinky deer overlord came back from heaven. Charlie rushes in to hug him, happy tears falling from her face. Charlie asks why he came back. He simply answers, "Heaven was boring there, not even entertaining. I requested to come back here to help with your hotel, for real this time." Charlie soon gets many more clients, as Alastor and Overlord had been redeemed. To her amazement, the rooms fill up and more demons want to become better. Even her parents slowly start to believe her more. Although Vaggie, Angel, Husk, and Nifty work on amending their personal flaws, they decide to stay in hell with Charlie. Alastor goes back to his old ways again, and everything goes back to normal. Charlie learns that redemption is a marathon, not a sprint. The progress rather than the destination is the most important. Her friends had a long way to go, but Charlie was alright with that. This ultimately concludes Alastor's story. I do hope you all enjoyed this. It has taken me 22 days to write, 2 mental breakdowns, juggling 3 big videos, and my training in between. If you like what you see for the road to redemption, there is a link down below to a poll for the next video, which probably won't come out until next year. I would like to thank Capricorn42 for proudly proofreading my writing and putting up on my sorry ass. Vivienne, Medrano, Ed Bosco, Dave Tedfell, Ashley along with Michael, Haunt Story, The Former Forsties, Amanda Heard, and many of the other artists at Spun the Horse. I would also like to personally thank Blue Raven, Hazbin, Magnes, and Vivziepop, and everyone on VR chat that I helped build. Also, thank you to the community for welcoming me in. Here's to next year. I hope there is less drama in this one, but now we get to entertain more people. Please subscribe to my channel, like and share this video. This is Radio Hazbin, tuning out for now. Oh, and by the way, happy birthday, Viv. You deserve it.